Sure. You can listen to new music. But do you ever just want to put on a little REO Speedwagon? Now I can't fight this feeling anymore. Of course you do. And record labels love it.
The most valuable thing that the major record labels have is their back catalog. This is music that's bought and paid for and proven. So this material is going to make money for the record industry, for the rights holders of these songs, for, until the heat death of the universe.
So if older tunes are money in the bank, what does that mean for what we hear? Hi, I'm Paul Haavardsrud. Welcome to The Cost of Living. The numbers show we're digging into the back catalogs of our favorite artists more than ever. But how much is the music industry nudging us to spin those tunes? Later in the show, we follow the money with music historian Alan Cross. And speaking of music and money, we may have spotted the fourth horseman of the inflation apocalypse. Concert tickets so pricey, you can now get them insured. Up first, working in a factory, coming home to a white picket fence is as American as baseball and apple pie. But real life isn't a Norman Rockwell painting. And factory work isn't like it used to be. So can Trump really make manufacturing great again? So Donald Trump wants to reshape the global economy, and he's trying to use tariffs to do that.
I want GE, IBM, and every other manufacturer that left us to be filled with regret and come sprinting back to our shores, and they will.
He wants factory jobs to come sprinting back to America, to make manufacturing great again. But what exactly would that look like? Here's U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick.
Remember, the army of millions and millions of human beings screwing in little screws to make iPhones, that kind of thing is going to come to America, and great Americans...
Do millions of Americans want to go back to work in factories? Imagine how much you'd have to pay them in U.S. dollars and what that could do to the cost of an iPhone. Bringing back factory jobs comes with a lot of questions. But Trump is betting his economy on this idea. So his fixation is now our problem. It's forcing Canada to look at our own manufacturing. Let's put manufacturing under the microscope. In the US, the number of factory jobs peaked in 1979 at just under 20 million workers. Today, it's down to less than 13 million. But the US population is also way bigger. For manufacturing jobs to make up the same share of the workforce as the peak, 27 million Americans would need to work in factories. That's more than double where it's at today.
The U.S. economy is not going to go back to the late 70s. It's just not. The way the world works, the way the world does business, the way products are made is just very different.
Ryan Mulholland is an economic policy analyst at the Center for American Progress. When he hears U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick describe an army of factory workers with tiny screwdrivers,
I have no idea what he means by that. I don't know a single person who wants to be in a factory screwing tiny screws into, electronic equipment. It's hard to process what they sort of think that the average worker and their family wants out of life.
Do American workers actually want the kinds of jobs Trump is promising? We could find out. Some factories do seem to be returning to the U.S., and that could mean more jobs. But Ryan says not nearly as many as Trump and Lutnick are talking about.
Today's manufacturing is not your father's manufacturing. It's certainly not your grandfather's manufacturing. A lot of, really advanced manufacturing is done with machines, done with robots, done with autonomous technologies. And so the number of jobs is going to simply be different than what existed in the past.
To give a sense of how much manufacturing has changed, we now have lights-out factories. These are plants so automated they run in the dark, The lights only come on when a human walks through to check on things. Now, most plants aren't lights out, but that's the general direction the industry is moving. Automation means fewer workers. Manufacturing has moved past the 1970s-style factory jobs Trump describes. So why is he so willing to upend the global economy to chase those jobs? Ryan says it's because making manufacturing great again isn't just about jobs. It's wrapped up in a bunch of other ideas. The pandemic had the whole world rethinking supply chains. And there's national security. The U.S. doesn't want to rely on other countries for stuff like steel and microchips. America also wants to cut down its dependence on China. Reshoring manufacturing is seen as a way to do that while curbing China's power in the world. And there are other reasons to like manufacturing. Ryan says you can draw a pretty straight line between it and innovation.
A lot of innovation happens on the factory floor. It's not just innovation that happens in a lab. You know, the US, Canada are very good at early stage, basic science, kind of research and development. But a lot of advancements occur when companies make things and they figure out how to make it better. And when you're not the producer of the product, you kind of miss out on some of that potential innovation.
When you're hands-on making something, that's when you can get the eureka moment. Oh, you know what we need here? And that can lead to a new invention. So maintaining a solid manufacturing base for an economy can bring some legit benefits. And Trump also knows some intangible ones, like nostalgia for days gone by.
In a lot of American towns, particularly in the industrial Midwest, a lot of the factory jobs that left, they went somewhere else, but the factory is literally still there. It is decrepit, and people drive past it every day. It is a very visible sign of something that was once here and is no longer. What Trump has been able to do is to tap into broad anger about something has been taken away from my community that used to provide jobs and opportunity and prosperity. That sense of, wanting somebody to sort of stand up and say, there's been a wrong committed in the past, and I'm going to try to address it, I think is politically popular.
Trump is set on bringing back American factory jobs. Whether that can actually happen is kind of beside the point. That's the path he's going down. So, what does this mean for Canada? For starters, it's forcing us to rethink manufacturing here.
Whether Canada wants to do that or not, I think that that's the world that we now inhabit.
Lachlan McKinnon researches what happens to places when manufacturing goes away. He's a history professor at Cape Breton University. When we look at what's happened in Canada, it kind of mirrors the States. Manufacturing employment is down by 500,000 workers since 2002. At that time, the sector employed 1 out of every 7 workers. Today, it's more like 1 out of every 13. Globalization, free trade, automation are all part of those jobs going away. What Lachlan sees happening now is a new tug-of-war between what's known as deindustrialization and reindustrialization. We're talking about reshoring some plants that moved offshore and wondering, are we too vulnerable?
There is a national security issue at play in terms of maintaining Canadian supply chains in ways that are resilient to massive disruptions in the global economy. How do we ensure that Canada is sort of a safe, sovereign, solid economy that can keep trucking, in the face of these sort of, in my lifetime, unprecedented challenges?
Trump's tariffs have more of us asking, should we make that here? But doing that, if it's even possible, would be expensive. So we have to figure out what's a need, like food, energy, steel, versus what's more of a want, like sneakers. How involved could governments get in all this, and what kind of money could we be talking about here? Well, we're already hearing calls for stuff like a national industrial policy, governments making big investments in certain industries. Lachlan says that kind of approach to the economy would be a significant change.
But I do think that we're at a moment where sort of the collective appetite for that sort of, barrel-chested state response might be there, today more than it would have been 10 years ago.
And, as Lachlan says, public sentiment could be in favor of more manufacturing. Now, we don't have the same kind of Rust Belt connection to factories as the U.S. Midwest, but the idea of factory jobs here can be basked in the same kind of sepia-toned Springsteen song, things were better when we built things kind of way. Six months ago, we weren't thinking too much about any of this. Lachlan says the history of Canada's economy is marked by a series of big shifts. And this is one of those moments.
This is another significant sort of turning point in the operation of the Canadian economy. And I think that Canadian policymakers would do well if they looked at sort of the lessons of the transition through NAFTA or earlier transitions to think about, this time we have an opportunity to get it right.
Maybe Trump can make manufacturing great again. Maybe he can't. But he wants more of America in hard hats. And that means Canada needs to get to work. On your radio and by podcast, this is The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Haavardsrud. When you buy insurance, it's for the big stuff, right? House, car, life. Not like a ticket to see Chapel Roan sing Pink Pony Club. That would just be silly. Or Blair Sanderson Fines. It used to be.
If this world were mine.
Hey, Roman numeral 7, babe, drop it like it's hot. Rapper Kendrick Lamar is one of the hottest acts on tour this summer. To make sure she got a ticket to his New York show, Ariana Rendon signed up for pre-sale access.
He's one of my favorite rappers of all time and everything. I just felt this was to be such like a big cultural moment.
Especially because Lamar is touring with R&B singer SZA.
So excited to see them on tour together because they make such great music together. They have such great chemistry. So that's why I bought the concert tickets.
The price for one of those tickets, more than $500.
It sounds wild, and yet you see it in the numbers where people are actually making those types of transactions.
Shiraz Mawani is an independent ticket broker in Toronto.
People inherently and anecdotally will tell you it feels more expensive.
He says the average price for big names like Beyoncé have nearly doubled in the past decade. At the high end, people are now paying upwards of $1,000 per ticket on the secondary market. As ticket prices climb, fans like Ariana Rendon are becoming more nervous about losing their investment. That's why she bought concert insurance.
It's like when you go out, it's like, let me just bring a jacket just in case I get cold or something. So if anything happens, you'll be good.
Ticket insurance is becoming a standard option on pricey concerts. Typically, it costs about 10% of the ticket price. So if you lay down $1,200 to see Coldplay this summer, the insurance will cost you more than $100. But if you can't go to the show, you'll get your money back. Maybe.
It cannot be that you've changed your mind. That does not exist as an insurance contract or as a protection contract.
Martin Boyer is a professor of finance at HEC Montreal. He says concert insurance protects you when the unexpected happens, like if you get sick. But
you need to go get a doctor's note saying that you really could not go. If you have the sniffles, this is not sufficient. It needs to be a major illness. If you break your leg, if you have a concussion, if you, for some medical reason, you cannot fly, you cannot drive, you cannot travel, then that is covered.
Martin says fans often don't realize how restrictive these policies can be. Like, if you're traveling to that concert and your flight's delayed or canceled, you need proof you were booked to fly and documentation from the airline that proves the plane didn't take off. The insurance will also cover you if you lose your job, but only if you've worked for the same employer for 3 years. Ariana Rendon has zero regrets about paying extra for that extra peace of mind.
I've just hurt my ankle one too many times. I hurt it like fragmented bones. So I just had to get surgery. So that's why I couldn't go to the concert anymore.
And for her, cashing in on the insurance was no problem.
It actually went by really quickly. I think I got an answer within like 48 hours, and then I got my money back within the next day via direct deposit.
And did you ask your doctor to mention the concert specifically?
Oh yeah, specifically, because I told her like I want my money back for this concert.
For The Cost of Living, I'm Blair Sanderson.
This is The Cost of Living. Listen to us on CBC Radio 1 or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Paul Haavardsrud. Well, it's the unofficial start of summer, May long weekend. Sure, it may still snow, but let's get summerin'. It's time for sunshine, barbecues, music, the song of the summer. Maybe your favorite is California Girls.
I wish they all could be California.
Or Nelly.
It's getting hot in here, so take off all your clothes.
How about Carly Rae Jepsen? Song of the Summer isn't a formal title. Enough people just agree, yup, that's it. Or at least they used to. The music business is now more fragmented than ever, and that shapes what we listen to all year long. To talk about this, Alan Cross is here. He's a music historian and the host of the podcast, The Ongoing History of New Music. Hi, Alan.
Hi.
So, Alan, can music fans come together around the same song today the way that we used to be able to?
Maybe, maybe not. The whole Song of the Summer phenomenon in its current form was an invention of the recorded music industry going back another about 10, 15 years perhaps. This whole idea that of manufactured consensus, that everybody is listening to this song, and this song more than any other represents the vibe and feel of a particular 4-month period. I don't necessarily buy that because I see how the sausage is made, and I see how the Song of the Summer sobriquet is pushed and manipulated throughout the summer. So I don't buy into it because I think summer is such a very important time for so many people that we end up having a very specific and very intimate relationship to everything that we do during those 3 or 4 months. And the idea of perhaps having somebody tell us what the Song of the Summer is, especially if it's a song that we don't like, is a bit of an anathema. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, you also use the word consensus there, and I think consensus is particularly interesting at this moment of time in the music industry because it feels like there's more fragmentation than ever in the music industry. So if we're in a more fragmented industry, consensus then would seem to be tougher to reach.
Yeah, the story I like to tell to people is when I was in grade 10, there were 30 people in the class. Of those 30 people, 5 were country music fans, 5 were pop music fans, and the other 20 were Kiss fans. And the reason they were Kiss fans is because the guy on the radio said that Kiss was the greatest band of all time. We'd go to the record store, and what was racked up front? Kiss. And we went to the drugstore to buy our copies of Cream magazine and Circus magazine and Rolling Stone or whatever, and who was on the cover? Kiss. So back then, we had a common language. There was a monoculture where it was easier to get on board with a particular artist, a particular album, a particular song. Today, everybody, thanks to streaming, is their own music director. We have ultimate individual control over whatever music enters our ears. So the idea of somebody telling us what is a hit and what you need to be listening to is a bit weird, considering that everybody is off listening to different things. And the consensus about what everybody should be listening to, or generally what everybody should be listening to, has disappeared.
What about behind the scenes of the music industry? What is happening there in terms of Who owns the record labels, and what is that, and what that's doing for, what used to be more of a monoculture?
Yeah, complicated question. What the music industry is doing is more the same. They're hung up on this way, the album cycle, the single cycle. They're still trying to do things the way they used to, and they're not really paying attention to the fact that young people, who are always the drivers of music, have moved on from that paradigm. They're just interested in good songs, and they're not necessarily interested in contemporary current songs, which is a big break from the way things used to be in the past. When I was growing up, we were listening to new music mostly. We wanted to know what was new and hot. That's what we wanted. Today, not so much.
So if new music has a different place potentially for music fans today, what is the relationship there between what the industry is doing and what they see as the value in their back catalogs?
Well, here's how it usually plays out. Right now, about 24% of all listening via streaming is done to songs less than 2 years old. Beyond 75% of listeners are choosing to listen to songs more than 2 years old. And that stretches all the way back to the beginning of time. What I've noticed is that young people, all they care about is this a good song? I don't care when it came from, where it from. I don't care when it was released. I don't care who is doing it. I don't care about the genre. I am an ecumenical music fan, and I will listen to anything as long as it's a good song. And this has confounded the record industry because they have been used to pushing and creating new music so that one day it would become catalog music and, maybe release and maybe result in some revenue that way. But now the bulk of the revenue seems to be coming from these songs that are more than 2 years old.
Well, then who's getting that money? Like, who owns the back catalogs by and large these days?
The major record labels. The most valuable thing that the major record labels have is their back catalog. This is music that's bought and paid for and proven. And it's something that seems to be evergreen. So this material is going to make money for the record industry, for the publishers, for the rights holders of these songs, for until the heat death of the universe. And it's very easy when you're a public company, like the big three major record labels are: Sony, Warner, Universal. When you've got you're a publicly traded company and you want to keep profits rolling in, the low-hanging fruit is to exploit your back catalog. Again, very little risk there, and there's no promotion required. You just sort of direct people to this older music and they find it naturally. Whereas with contemporary music, there's a lot of promotion, there's a lot of marketing, there's a lot of distribution that has to be done, and it costs a lot of money. Back catalogs, they don't have that problem. They just count the money as it rolls in.
So has the industry figured out then how to push more of their back catalog onto us?
Oh, yes. There's been, all you have to do is look at the number of box sets that are released. You can look at the number of reissues that are released. You can look at the licensing arrangements. You've probably turned on a TV and heard a commercial with an old song in the background. That's, again, exploitation of older intellectual property. So the record labels realize that they're sitting on this giant gold mine, and they're going to do whatever they possibly can to keep that music generating revenue. And they're doing a very good job at that.
Then what is the relationship between that and that push and new music? There's kind of this current of thinking out there that maybe the music industry is at a creative low point. Is that just me with those old guy glasses on, or is there actually something to that because of the business side of things?
No, you may be correct. There is a feeling that today's contemporary music isn't as exciting as it was several years ago. Now, this could simply be, the critics that we're hearing. It could be that we're just at a low point in the music cycle. Music, good music comes and goes. It's interesting to see. There's a bit. I don't know if there's a panic in the music industry, but there is some concerns. Is why can't we create new stars the way we used to? As a matter of fact, if you look back at the number of artists who have emerged since 2000, who are capable of filling a stadium or an arena, that number has gone down. And that just goes to reinforce this idea of segmentation, of fragmentation, of separation into all these different genres. I mean, it's the Tower of Babel out there right now. And if you can't convince enough people that this particular artist is worth their $150, you're not going to get them out to fill an arena or a stadium.
How does that business reality affect the types of choices that artists and musicians are making?
That's a good question. One of the things that we're learning is that there are certain ways of writing songs that will maximize revenue when it comes to streaming. A lot of people don't realize that you don't make any money as an artist unless somebody streams your song for at least 30 seconds. So all songwriting has become about holding somebody's attention for that important first 30 seconds. So that means shorter intros. You're putting the chorus up front. There's a bunch of sugary high hooks in that first 30 seconds. Anything to drag you until the counter hits 31, so you get paid your fraction of a cent. So in this particular case, the technology is guiding the method of composition. The technology is warping art to make it fit how the delivery system works.
So it's like Tom Petty said, don't bore us, get to the chorus, except this is being driven more by crass commercialism.
You can call it crass commercialism, or you could call it just surviving. Like I said, 25% of people will skip an unfamiliar song in the first 5 seconds. It's 29% for 10 seconds and 35% for the first 30 seconds. So it's all about holding our attention. And there are music fans that have lots of attention, and then there are those who don't. So the trick is to find that balance.
Alan Cross, a pleasure. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Alan Cross is a music historian and the host of the podcast, The Ongoing History of New Music. That's all for the show. The Cost of Living is based in Calgary. The show is produced by Danielle Nerman, Blair Sanderson, and Jennifer Keane, with help from Jeff Kynock. I'm Paul Haavardsrud. Thanks for listening.